I thought my life was simple and honest, a quiet thread woven from small, steady days. Raphael and I met in a photography class when our university campus still smelled of rain and possibility. He had a laugh that reached his eyes, and an easy way of making promises sound like warm blankets. I, the quieter of the two, loved words and light, watching the world through my camera and believing that truth could be found in a single, honest frame. We married young, with a few close friends, and my mother smiling as if the future were a promise already fulfilled. For a long time, his hand felt like home, and I believed nothing could break the ordinary trust we had built. The first crack wasn't dramatic. It arrived as a whisper missed calls that turned into excuses, late nights that became patterns. Raphael would say he had client meetings, then fall into silence for hours, returning with a tired smile that tried too hard. I told myself stories to keep the chill away, inventing explanations that fit the life I wanted to believe in. But small things began to refuse those stories. A perfume I didn't own on his jacket, a receipt for a restaurant neither of us remembered visiting, a name whispered on his lips that felt foreign in our home. Each illusion peeled back slowly until nothing of the mask remained. When the evidence finally surfaced, it arrived not in a confession, but through a stranger's message, an image sent to me with no explanation. It showed Raphael smiling in a cafe with a woman I didn't know, her hand on his knee, the way their heads tilted together like two secrets sharing a joke. The photograph was clear. There was no angle to soften the truth. I felt my stomach drop through the floor, and for a while I couldn't name anything but the raw fact of it. His mouth curved in that familiar way. His eyes crinkled the way they always had, and the world I had trusted unraveled in a single frame. I kept the photo in a drawer as if it were a relic, though it felt like evidence in a case I wasn't sure I wanted to pursue. Instead of crumbling, a strange thing happened inside me. I found focus. Betrayal sharpened my senses. It cleared away a fog I hadn't known was clouding my mind. With quiet, careful steps, I began to follow the trail of his days. I paid attention to the rhythm of his messages, the recurring names in his calendar, and the small inconsistencies that had once seemed insignificant. I made copies of receipts, saved screenshots of messages, and kept a small ledger where I noted dates and places. My evenings became a study of patterns, my notebooks full of details that would later form a map. Watching him move through his life with practiced charm, I was no longer the woman who accepted stories. I was the one who collected facts. As the evidence mounted, the story that Raphael had told the world began to unravel. It turned out his charm hid more than infidelity. It masked a web of lies about his business affairs, fake contracts, and misappropriated funds. People he'd called partners were actually shells, names on ledgers that led to accounts in distant places. I discovered that he had used our wedding savings as seed money for deals that never existed, that he'd taken advantage of trusting clients and framed losses as market fluctuation. His duplicity became a pattern of theft disguised as risk, and with each new fact I cataloged, my resolve grew. I realized I had two choices: collapse under the weight of his deceit, or use the truth as a lever to lift myself out of the ruin. I chose the latter, and I promised myself I would not be weak again. I began to build quietly, gathering proof and finding small allies who owed him nothing and wanted truth. Each night I read through bank statements and messages until the numbers formed a map. The woman I thought defined by weakness found instead a strange strength in work that felt like justice and a clarity that would not be silenced. I kept going. In the weeks that followed, I moved through our home like a stranger pretending to belong. Raphael's voice still filled the rooms, smooth and practiced, every lie carefully folded into the rhythm of daily life. He'd kiss my forehead before leaving for meetings, not realizing that I had already begun to trace his movements, quietly building a web of truths he couldn't escape. Every message, every transaction, every meeting was a thread I collected, pulling it all together into something undeniable. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized his betrayal wasn't just personal, it was systemic. He wasn't only cheating on me, He was cheating everyone who had ever trusted him. It was no longer about love. It was about deception, arrogance, and the way people like him thought they could manipulate the world without consequence. And yet I waited. Revenge, I knew now, was not a thing to rush. It needed to be crafted, timed, and sharpened until it struck with precision. One evening, while he was out, I met with Emma, a journalist and an old university friend who had once investigated corporate frauds. I showed her the ledgers, the fake contracts, and the transfers I had uncovered. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the evidence, realization dawning with every page. "He's been laundering through ghost firms," she whispered. "If this goes public, it'll destroy his name." That was exactly what I wanted. But I didn't tell her everything, some things I still needed to control myself. Emma agreed to dig deeper, and together we built a narrative that couldn't be denied. She would publish the story only when I gave the signal. Meanwhile, I began to play the perfect wife again, smiling, cooking, laughing. I learned to weaponize his assumptions, to make him believe I was blind again. I wanted him comfortable, careless, certain, because that's when people like Raphael reveal themselves completely. As I played my role, I started seeing sides of him I'd missed before, the way he spoke to waiters as if they were beneath him, how easily he twisted a truth into something convenient, how every apology he'd ever given me had been a performance. I began recording our conversations, capturing the soft cruelty hidden in his tone, the entitlement that had once sounded like confidence. One night, I watched him sleep beside me, his face calm, the same mouth that had fed me lies resting in peace, and I wondered how I could have ever loved him. Yet the thought didn't make me bitter anymore, it made me focused. Strength, I realized, wasn't in pretending you weren't hurt. It was in standing inside the hurt and refusing to be defined by it. When the time came, my plan was set in motion like a series of falling dominoes. Emma contacted a government auditor who had already been suspicious of Raphael's company. Within days, quiet inquiries began, unnoticed by him but devastating in their precision. I stayed close, pretending everything was normal. Each morning he smiled and left, unaware that his world was already starting to crumble from within. There was a poetic justice in that silence, the same kind of silence he had given me when I cried alone, the silence he used to dismiss my intuition. Now it worked in my favor. He didn't see the collapse until it was too late. His accounts were frozen one by one. His partners began calling, panicking, and the newspapers started hinting at financial irregularities connected to his firm. The night he came home pale, his phone ringing nonstop, I sat calmly by the window, watching him unravel. He looked at me with confusion, as if the universe had turned on him unfairly. I said nothing. I wanted him to feel what I had felt, the shock, the disbelief, the loneliness of realizing that your world was built on lies. By the time the first article was published, everything I had worked for was in motion. Emma had done her job beautifully. The headline read, "Local entrepreneur accused of fraud and financial manipulation." Raphael's name was everywhere, his face printed beside the words betrayal and corruption. He paced the living room, shouting at lawyers, at friends, at no one in particular. "They're lying," he yelled. "Someone's trying to destroy me." I watched him, my heart steady. He was right about one thing, someone was destroying him. But not out of cruelty, out of justice. And I wasn't weak anymore. I was the truth he had spent years running from. The following days dragged on like endless nights. Aiden tried to pretend everything was normal, but his eyes gave away the storm he was trying to hide. Every time I passed by, I could feel his guilt hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. He stopped eating properly, barely spoke at dinner, and avoided my gaze like I was a mirror he couldn't face. But I wasn't planning to comfort him, not this time. Instead, I began to quietly prepare my exit. I met with a lawyer in secret, someone who had handled women's rights cases with fierce precision. She told me that I had every legal right to half of everything, the house, the cars, even the company shares under my name. That night, when I got home, I found Aiden sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV that wasn't even on. His silence was deafening. "You're leaving, aren't you?" he said without turning his head. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to see if he'd fight for me, for us. But all he did was sigh, defeated. I didn't mean for it to go this far. My heart ached at how weak his words sounded. You didn't mean to betray me either, right? I said quietly, setting my bag down. You didn't mean to lie for months? To make me feel crazy? He flinched but stayed silent. That silence was my answer. In the days that followed, I stayed composed, acting as though everything was fine. I laughed at work, met with clients, even posted happy photos online, the perfect facade of a happy woman. But inside, I was crumbling, holding back tears whenever I looked at the man who used to be my safe place. He had become a stranger wearing my husband's face. One evening, I caught him looking through old photos on his laptop, our wedding, our first vacation, the night he proposed under the city lights. His eyes were glassy, and for a moment, I saw the man I fell in love with. But then I remembered his betrayal, the messages I found, the nights he lied about working late. Don't do that, I said from the doorway. Don't look at those pictures like you miss me. You broke what can't be fixed. He closed the laptop slowly, his expression unreadable. Do you still love me, Claire? He asked. I stood still, my heart pounding painfully. Love? I whispered, almost laughing. Love doesn't survive lies. You killed it the night you chose her over me. I walked away before he could reply. But that night, I cried silently into my pillow, not for him, but for the woman I used to be before his betrayal changed her. A week later, I received an invitation to an upcoming gala organized by Aiden's company. Normally, I would have ignored it, but this time, something inside me whispered that I needed to go not as his broken wife, but as the woman who had found her power again. I called my lawyer and told her I'd attend before finalizing the papers. You sure you're ready for this? She asked. More than ever, I replied. When the night came, I wore a black satin gown that hugged every curve perfectly. My hair pulled into a sleek bun, diamonds glinting on my neck. The moment I entered, all eyes turned, including his. Aiden froze mid-conversation, his glass trembling slightly. I smiled faintly, walking past him without a word, feeling every ounce of the confidence he once tried to steal from me. But fate had one more twist waiting that night, something that would change everything again. The gala hall glittered with chandeliers and quiet whispers, every guest adorned in luxury and secrets. I could feel Aiden's gaze following me from across the room, heavy with regret and confusion. I made sure not to look back. I didn't come here for him, I came to close a chapter. As I sipped my champagne, a tall man approached me, someone familiar from business circles, Marcus Hale, a billionaire investor who had once offered Aiden's company a major deal that Aiden arrogantly declined. Claire, Marcus said warmly, his voice deep and confident. You look unstoppable tonight. I smiled slightly, appreciating the word he chose. Thank you, Marcus. It's been a while. His eyes softened, then darkened slightly as he looked toward Aiden. I heard things didn't end well. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence between us said enough. Then let's make new beginnings, he added. Before I could respond, Aiden appeared beside us, his face tight with jealousy. Marcus, Claire, didn't expect to see you two getting cozy. Marcus raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Why not? Your wife is quite remarkable. Ex-wife, Aiden snapped before realizing what he'd just said aloud. Gasps rippled from nearby guests who overheard. My lips curved into a calm smile. Not yet, but soon, I said softly, meeting Aiden's eyes with quiet defiance. The tension was so thick it could be felt through the music. Aiden tried to save face, pretending to laugh it off, but his mask was cracking. Marcus took my hand, just a polite gesture, but one that spoke volumes. Let me show you the new proposal we've been developing, he said, leading me toward a private lounge area. As we walked away, I could feel Aiden's anger burning holes into my back. The moment we were alone, Marcus turned serious. Claire, I know this isn't my place, but I need you to know something. Aiden came to me last week begging for another chance at the deal he once rejected. He mentioned you. He said he'd lost you and needed this deal to prove something. I froze. Prove what? That he could win you back, Marcus said quietly. My chest tightened, emotions I thought were buried rushing to the surface. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, the sleepless nights. It's too late, I said, more to myself than to him. He made his choice. Marcus nodded, understanding. Then make yours count. His words echoed like a challenge. Later that night, as the gala wound down, Aiden cornered me near the exit. His tie was loosened, his eyes desperate. Claire, please. Just listen. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the man I once loved, but someone lost in his own mess. What do you want me to say, Aiden? That I forgive you? He shook his head, his voice breaking. No, I just want you to know that I'm sorry. That losing you showed me what I destroyed. For the first time in months, I believed him, but belief didn't mean forgiveness. Maybe someday, I said softly, but not today. I stepped past him, leaving behind the smell of his cologne and the weight of our past. Outside, the night air felt cold and freeing. Marcus's car pulled up, and as he opened the door for me, I took one last look back. Aiden stood in the doorway, watching me with tears in his eyes. The woman who once begged for his love was gone. I got into the car, whispering to myself, now, it's my turn to live. But as the car drove off, I couldn't shake the feeling that fate wasn't done with either of us, yet that one last revelation was still waiting to surface. The weeks that followed the gala felt strangely calm, as if the chaos that had defined my life had finally settled into silence. I spent most of my time rebuilding the company I had once shared with Aiden, pouring my heart into every decision. Investors who had once ignored me now called me the face of resilience. My team respected me, my confidence returned, and my laughter, the one I thought I'd lost, began to sound genuine again. One morning, as I was preparing for a board meeting, my assistant knocked on the door and handed me a sealed envelope. This came by courier, she said. Inside, there was a single letter, Aiden's handwriting, shaky and uncertain. I don't expect forgiveness, it read, but you deserve the truth. The betrayal you think was mine wasn't what it seemed. There was someone manipulating everything from the start. My hands trembled slightly. Beneath the letter was a flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop, and the video that appeared made my breath catch. It was footage of his business partner, Daniel, secretly meeting with the journalist who had leaked the false story that ruined both our reputations. The realization hit me like a wave. Aiden hadn't fully betrayed me, he'd been set up too. I sat in stunned silence, tears threatening to fall. All this time, I had built my strength from pain, anger, and survival, never realizing that part of my foundation was built on misunderstanding. That night, I drove to the small apartment address he had written at the bottom of the letter. When he opened the door, he looked like a ghost of his former self, thinner, quieter, humbled. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us carried every word we never said. You saw the video, he finally whispered. I nodded, my voice soft. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He looked down. Because I thought you'd already moved on. And maybe you deserved to. His honesty broke something inside me. I realized that revenge had blinded me so much, I hadn't stopped to see the full picture. We both lost, I said quietly. But maybe we can both learn. He smiled faintly, tears glistening in his eyes. You're stronger than I ever deserved. In the days that followed, I cleared Aiden's name publicly, exposing Daniel's deceit and the fabricated story that had destroyed our lives. The media turned on Daniel, and he was forced to resign in disgrace. When reporters asked me why I helped Aiden after everything, I said simply, because truth matters more than revenge. That single line went viral, turning me into an unexpected symbol of forgiveness and resilience. Yet deep inside, I knew this wasn't about forgiving Aiden completely, it was about freeing myself, letting go of the bitterness that had chained me to the past. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Aiden met me at a quiet cafe. Thank you, he said, his voice steady. Not just for clearing my name, but for reminding me that broken doesn't mean finished. I smiled softly. And betrayal doesn't mean weak, I replied. As we parted ways that night, I felt an overwhelming peace wash over me. Maybe our story had ended, but it didn't need to be tragic. It was a reminder that pain can be a teacher, not just a wound. That losing everything can sometimes lead you back to yourself. And as I walked home beneath the Golden City lights, I knew one thing for certain: strength isn't found in vengeance, but in the courage to heal. I turned to the camera in my mind, addressing every soul who'd ever been hurt, every person who'd ever felt broken. If someone betrayed you, I whispered, don't let it define you. Let it refine you, because sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they thought you couldn't be.